Betsy, will you join me? You've stepped into a powerful legacy with a movement that started in the 1970s of Sojourners, with a group of students living out their faith in the real world amidst war and injustice and spiritual longing. And today, as editor-in-chief, many of you all may not know this, but Betsy and I were at Yale together and graduated together. There's a nice picture in my office. And now, right after graduation, 2 days after, you started at Sojourners and have been there ever since. And now, as editor-in-chief, you're stewarding a vision that is in an entirely different cultural movement. Can you share with us what is the heart of Sojourners' mission today? How has it evolved since those early days, and how is it being lived out in the face of complex and overwhelming realities we're facing today?
Ooh. Well, thanks, Tim. I'm really glad to be here. Sojourners, the name evokes movement, travel, people walking towards something that we haven't quite gotten to. Sometimes we think of this as the kingdom of God. Sometimes we say it's the beloved community. And as we are walking, we are doing that with the poor, the outcast, the strangers, those who have been ostracized. Even as we recognize we ourselves have some of those same things in us. We believe those people have a unique moral call on our lives as Christians. We do this as a publication, writing about these things, and we also have a side of our organization called Sojo Action, which is about, okay, but like, how do we do it? Can you train us? Can you offer us some resources, some on-ramps to figure out what this means? And I think as you think about what it's evolved, you talk about the early community in the 70s, which was very much a part of a movement of its day of let's practice these alternate communities where we live together. Sojourners doesn't have that kind of living together anymore, though the people who do our year-long fellowship program, they live in a house and they share and they practice being like, okay, you care about peace and justice, but what about when you share a grocery bill? See what happens. How peaceful you feel. So it's still a part of our practice, but we are now, if we were once a community doing these things kind of amongst ourselves and in a very specific neighborhood, we now think of ourselves as a community of communities. And I see the role, especially of the publication, as trying to be some of the glue that links communities like Wilshire, like churches all across the country and around the world of people who are trying to live out this call to justice. And not as like, hey, we're a coalition of smug people who know how to do this, who can take everything Tim just said and be like, yeah, well, we've got that figured out. But of people who are earnest, are trying to figure it out with each other, are encouraging each other when it's hard, are mourning together when it's difficult, and who are sharing ideas of like, hey, here's what we've been doing. And occasionally, sometimes spurring each other on when we're getting it a little bit wrong or not getting it all the way there. You asked about complex realities, which is a great euphemism for this world, this year, I think. Lots of complex realities. And last fall, after the election, I was talking to Maria J. Stephan, who is a pro-democracy organizer, has spent her life researching nonviolent social movements. Most of her work has been overseas, working in different nonviolent movements. How does it work? How does it take action? But for reasons I don't think I need to mention, she has recently turned her work towards this country. And I went to her and I said, okay, Maria, what is the role of a publication like Sojourners in a time like this, complex realities and all? And she was really thoughtful, and she said, Betsy, the media sometimes goes towards the things that are wrong. You cover all of the things that are broken, the injustice, and that's an important part of your role, to tell the world as it is. But she said, to the best you can, try to tell stories of people coming together, doing courageous action in a number of different ways to be part of the work towards this. And this can look all different ways. And so I think in terms of what that looks like, it's trying to tell some of those stories, trying to tell stories of what's happening in communities like yours, in DC, where I live, which has had quite a few things happening in the last 30 days.
Tell us a little bit more what that looks like in regards of what is hope in a time where we can also feel hopeless.
Yeah. This is going to sound strange for an editor, but I think we find hope with our feet. And that is, yes, we want to write the best articles, produce the best stories we can. But ultimately, it's about spurring people to action and in doing that ourselves. Being in places where you are with other people who are struggling, who are figuring it out. In DC, I've spent some time with communities that are very scared right now because of all of the presence of federalized troops in the city. And a number of faith communities have come together, and we've had rallies. And protests alone don't change things. I think sometimes people think like, oh, protest, that's it. Sometimes protest is for the people who show up. It's to say, hey, look around. There are other people here who care, who are doing things. And that change sometimes starts with me. It's like, okay, great. I can be reminded that there are other people. And since I know you and I are both nerds, I'll say the other thing that really gives me hope is we are not the first group of Christians to deal with troubles of injustice, of watching things happen in our country that we wish were not happening. People here in this city, in this room, have dealt with that their whole lives. And for some of us, this is joining a movement of which maybe we've been privileged enough to not necessarily feel like we have to show up for, and now we're here. And so both of those things really give me hope.
Yeah. Well, as we move to the table, help us understand a little bit more of what it's like to be not just hearers of the word, but doers.
I think it requires a radical openness in a world that wants to make us very closed, right? There are so many forces that want us to feel scared, alone, like it's all just, why even bother? It's too big. And if we really hear the word and take it into our lives and the parts that hurt, the problems that we have, not like abstract problems, but like the stuff in our communities, in our lives, and let it sit there, I think that's part of it. And then part of it is the work of the Spirit. It's hard. If I told you it was easy, here's 3 simple steps to faith and justice, that's not true, nor is it, I think, helpful to anyone. I think we have to pray and be open to the Spirit and what are we being called to do in small ways, in big ways, with our money, with our time, with the resources we have, with the people we're in community with. And we practice that at the communion table by taking things in and becoming part of what we do.
Right.